Hi there, Glocal citizens. Welcome back to the podcast that inspires a borderless mindset around manifesting a new world. I am your host, Florence Adu, coming to you from, I'm in Accra right now. And the raining season has started. We had a nice morning of heavy rains and the humidity. It's really hot. So folks, if I haven't mentioned, this time of year is like the real summer in Ghana. It's hot, 90 degrees every day, very humid. So if you're planning travel, just know that March, April, after the Harmattan, it's like summer heat, right? And then it becomes springish as the rain season's starting. So it's kind of like we're in that in-between phase. Just giving you that update because it's always nice to talk about the weather, right? And I'll also give you a little insight. So I think I may have mentioned last year that I did this Ayurvedic cleanse here. I found an Ayurvedic center, did a cleanse, and I want to say it brought my running legs back. And so I'm back this year starting again. And it's such a great dovetail for my guest today. So let me get right into her bio and then you'll know how all the pieces fall together. So my guest started out in the world of work after finding her voice, literally, in university, when she traveled the country as lead singer of the band Baliz Baha. Following a successful career in media, entertainment, and teaching, she focused on entrepreneurism to launch a web of wellness. So now, with over 24 years of experience as an Ayurvedic wellness and performance coach at AWOW, that's a web of wellness, my guest helps clients achieve optimal health and well-being through personalized diet, lifestyle, and meditation practices. She is a board-certified Ayurvedic practitioner by the National Ayurvedic Medical Association, NAMA, and a Chopra certified health teacher and student at Chopra Global, where she learns from the renowned Deepak Chopra and his team of experts. Her involvement with NAMA includes participating on the DEI committee, reflecting her dedication to inclusivity within the field. So that's so important, guys. Additionally, she has authored articles, led DEI workshops, and extended her expertise to cater to a diverse clientele. Again, so important, because if I hadn't gone to India, I'd heard pieces of it, but just to know that there is a person, no shakes to the Indian, origins and all that stuff, but it's nice to have in our Africanness or African medical tradition that we're using and fusing all of these things. And I think she's going to talk a little bit more about that as well. Kadiatou Sibi, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Florence. Oh my goodness, this is such a nice homecoming, Thank
Yay. So let's get started. Where are you from? Where are you local? And what is your craft?
Okay, so I was born in Julangel in Gambia, West Africa. Mm-hmm. I am locally in Los Angeles, California, in Leimert Park. And my craft is helping people get back to who they are and understanding that they have the ability to help heal themselves.
What the world needs now, some healing. Okay, so I kind of got into this in your bio, but we're curious about how you came to that craft. How did a Gambian young woman end up in Los Angeles as an Ayurvedic practitioner?
Yeah, wow. Well, so I grew up in New York City, right? I grew up in New York City.
And that's how we know each other.
My family, exactly. My family immigrated when I was quite young. And so my dad was at that time doing import-export. And so he was traveling quite a bit. And, life progressed. He moved back to Africa, to the Ivory Coast. And I went to school up north, boarding school, and then New Hampshire, and started singing with a group. And we toured around the world. And then I ended up just kind of drifting, I would say, kind of just like allowing myself to be like, all right, well, where do we go? And, with my parents, that wasn't something that they particularly supported. Right. So, but it was just this sense of like, well, what do I do now? Because I felt this calling. I've always had this calling of expression, but also I always wanted to be a nurse, right, growing up. I always had a sense of wanting to help nurture people. And it showed up in different ways along the way. But eventually, I ended up in Texas. I started doing West African dance, of all places. And you know where I learned? I learned in Burlington, Vermont.
Okay.
Vermont is where I learned in dance. Yes. But it was really something that helped me to reclaim a part of me that I think as, first generation immigrants, I felt a sense of distance from my homeland.
Yeah.
And there I was in cold, wintry Vermont and hearing African drums playing, like wafting through the snow-filled trees.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like, I need to do something. It just because it's just a calling. It's always this calling from back from a place that's long ago, not from this time even.
Mm-hmm.
It's this call.
Mm-hmm.
I've always had this calling, right? So I did the dance. I moved to New York. I eventually left the band, went to Texas to help my sister. She gave birth, was in a car accident on my way back to New York because I was like, I'm not ready to settle down. And my father was visiting because he had someone at a friend who was being invested at the UN. And then I got into the car accident. My father met me. He said, "You're going to California. It's too cold in New York," because I'd broken my pelvis and my back. You're going to California. So I was in California with my aunt. Thank goodness. I love her. One of my favorite aunts. And so I spent time there. And this is 2002. I jumped into the music scene and the art scene here as well. It's very different. But then I got married. I met my ex-husband now, and I started to settle down. And I felt this sense of this nurturing that I was talking about, right? This nurturing with my children. And then I thought, well, how am I going to keep my music and my art alive? And this nurturing that I feel, I ended up opening up a school for mothers and their children, music classes. So there was a sense of like nurturing. But in that class, I noticed that the mothers, usually with parents, what will happen is that parents will introduce themselves as the mother of their child. They never claim themselves. They never introduce themselves, right? It's like, oh, I'm so-and-so's mother. I'm so-and-so's mother. And so in this class, I saw it as an opportunity to be able to allow people to tell me their name, to who are you? Who are you? And so these are the sort of the building blocks of like, who are you? It's this constant sense of like, who am I and who are you? And then through every stage, whether it was music, motherhood. And then eventually, I started to go, I was really stressed out and became extremely I started to self-medicate and I just went down a really bad path, I should say. All of the trauma and all the things that I experienced that I hadn't dealt with, I was trying to suppress. And so that wasn't working and it was coming out in different ways. And so I eventually ended up in rehab because I said, my life is falling apart and something is wrong here. And so in that, I was able to understand what this calling was, what this feeling of was. And it was this sense of meditation, right? Of being still, of understanding what it is and asking myself every day, how can I serve today? How can I serve today? How can I serve today? And it was taking myself out of what was going on in my mind or what my idea of what should and should not be, and understanding what is my purpose here? What is it that I'm supposed to do? And the nursing kept coming up, nursing, helping, assisting. And it's so funny. My neighbor growing up was from India. And I spoke with him. One time I just had to find him. I just got this calling again and said, find him. I hadn't spoken to him in 25 years. I called him. I was like, hi. And he said, what's going on? He's a palm reader.
Oh, okay.
He asked me to send him my palm reading. I mean, it was just, so I sent him my palm. I took a picture and sent it to him. He was like, okay, you have to do medicine. I mean, he was telling me all these things that I had never told him before. So he was giving me a spiritual reading. And that is something that, and he's like, I said, well, I can't do nursing. I feel like it's going to take me too long. He's like, why don't you try Ayurveda? And so I said, my goodness, 25 years I haven't seen you. You've been my neighbor my entire life. And it was just this idea of like, we have all these answers within us all the time. It's about listening.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so, it never goes away. And you'll always get clues to keep going back to what your purpose is.
Yeah.
So once I started studying Ayurveda, it became so clear to me, my goodness, my father's family has done this for millennia, healing people, working with people through prayers and herbs, and it's in my lineage. And so that was something that was also that I was not a part of too much because I had grown up in the States and I only visited every so often. And it was never to the extent where I could even study or watch anyone do this work. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's what brought me to Ayurveda, and it really helped me to remember that we as Africans and indigenous people have always used herbs or food for healing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, shea butter was always, in my nose growing up. So we were, nausea is one of the
Yes.
that we use to help clean our nasal cavity.
Yeah.
And so when I was growing up in New York and it was cold and dry because of the heat, my mom always placed the shea butter in our nostrils and it would help us with our colds. And so it's just helping me to remember my ancestral roots and abilities. And so I love Ayurveda because it's codified,
Mm-hmm.
right? It has
Mm-hmm.
been, there's so many different books that are
Mm-hmm.
out there that we can reference.
Mm-hmm.
And my goal really is to help to codify African traditional medicine.
I love that. I love that. That's awesome. So I'm just curious,
That was a long answer.
yeah, yeah. And you also answered my why the where to some extent, and I'll go back to that a little bit, but breaking your back and pelvis. What kind of recovery, thinking about wellness, what kind of recovery was that about? And when you started to go into this healing journey, that's like your sacral and your root chakra. And so I'm imagining like there was so much healing that, okay, you did the physical healing when it happened, but then the after, like what was it like healing,
Yeah. So I think that's a really good question. Thank you for asking that. It was really eye-opening because it was the first time that I had to be still. I was always on the go, always moving, right? And so we move from our core, from that, especially from that area.
Yeah.
And so there was the healing that occurred. I mean, obviously I couldn't move, and so past that. But then I truly believe that I was still so unaware of the deep-seated trauma that existed.
Yeah.
That I still kept wanting to dance because I was an athlete. I was a dancer, like so my body was still very fit, and so it just was like a physical thing for me, right? I wasn't really in tune with the emotional aspect and how it was in my area until I was having very heavy menstrual cycles, right? I was having very heavy menstrual cycles, like a lot heavy, and it wasn't very light and bright. It was dark and heavy, and cramps. There was a lot of cramps, and so that's all the sacral chakra. That's all the root chakra, and there's a lot of blockage.
Yeah.
So I think after again going through this space of the dark seat of the soul, as some people call it, I started to realize, oh my gosh, I've never felt safe. I'd never felt safe. I'd never felt like I was grounded anywhere. I'd never felt really that I could express myself from a sensual space as a woman, which is that area until I started to meditate and pray, and a lot of those and take herbs really to help with those, to help clean that area.
Yeah.
If I should say. So that brought a lot of tears. It brought a lot of isolation. I'm already kind of a loner anyway, but it really helped. I couldn't really interact with people. I intentionally said, I'm going to take this time to work on myself, to study, to understand why this is happening. Because I'm always just trying to figure out why something is happening. And so I love that because it helps me to really look at my clients, when I'm working with them, like, why is that? What was happening during that time? What occurred? When was the first time you experienced this?
Right.
And so I was always afraid to look and ask those questions because I didn't know how deep pain was. I didn't know how much it was how long I'd be sad or or not have any connection with anyone. And so it was a sense of having to just accept that deep in my core that I'm whole, complete, and beautiful, that there's nothing wrong with me. Everything is intact, and everything that I've experienced was circumstantial. Was from another place. It didn't harm or dampen the core of who I am. And so understanding that is where a lot of that healing is still coming from.
Right.
Because it's constantly still shedding. I'm still shedding. I believe that we are here as humans to help each other see the beauty in us and also see the areas of growth. And it's always a lesson and opportunity So I hope that
Yeah,
answers
yeah,
your
yeah,
question.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so going back to the idea of why the where, so you made it to California, you went to Los Angeles and you stayed.
Yeah.
So how does Leimert Park and how does your life, what's the why and how of your staying and being in California?
Yeah. So, I met so it was my auntie, and then I moved to Marina Del Rey, which is on the coast
Hmm.
in California with my husband. He's from China. And so he came here when he was 25. And he, interestingly enough, his family is also, his mom
Healing
was also someone
tradition.
who was very in tune. Yeah.
Hmm.
With like she would go to the top of the mountain and meditate and be able to find someone who was lost in the mountains. Like that was her job of the area.
Wow.
So yeah,
Yeah, this
pretty
is your story. This is just what your story.
this is my life.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
used to be so ashamed and afraid of it. I used to
Mm.
think it was so like, how can I even talk about these things? We have this idea of like, okay, you're either Christian, you're Muslim, you're Jewish. Like this, there's no sense of being able to tap in and to use this. Like we have sensory skills that are beyond our five.
Hmm.
If you think about it, even in the animal world, like if kingdom, like you'll see animals just be standing there, and then one person will just sense danger, and they're not even talking to each other, and they feel it, and they'll move. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
right, it's
yeah, yeah.
that's so yeah, that's so I met with him, and then eventually that shifted and changed, and a friend of mine had a building in the area with my kids, and I went with my kids, and we just moved here several years ago, and I just love this area.
Okay. Yeah,
This is
yeah,
a historically African American
yeah.
community after like several years, but a lot of people who are actually in the South
Hmm.
and they migrated to California.
Yep.
And so, there was still a lot of, redlining and all of that occurred here in Los Angeles. I just watched the movie The Banker. I don't know if you've seen it. I think it's
Hmm.
a phenomenal movie. Have
It's
you
a
seen that?
great,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
Hmm. Yep.
Yes. And so Leimert Park had a lot of, people who were artists or celebrities, right? That were African American and also doctors and engineers. Yeah. So it's Leimert Park, View Park, and Windsor Hills. But it just so happened that, right after Juneteenth was made a holiday. And after, unfortunately, George Floyd, that the whole world came out and was like, what is happening? Right. And then the onset of DEI and all of these things. I don't know. I really liked being here. There's another place where every Sunday and Saturday the drums are playing in the courtyard. You
Mm.
always hear drumming
Hmm.
going
Hmm.
on,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
it's so funny. I keep finding myself because the drum is our heartbeat, right? The
Yeah.
drum has always been
Yes.
used, for healing. It helps for healing circles. We use it for dance and all of that. But when you think about it from its inception, a lot of the times there are a lot of ceremonies that were done that help people to heal, or just music itself is
Okay.
a way of healing. Sound helps with the mind. It helps with the heart.
Sure, sure, sure.
So yeah.
So I want to get more into the business of being an Ayurvedic practitioner, but before then, because you've already started talking a little bit about the area, I want to know about your Glocal speak. What
Yes.
we want to know what you hear. So if you can share a word, a phrase, or a saying that is a meaningful part of your local experience and why or how you come to value it as Glocal speak.
Yes. Okay. So let's think. Leimert Park, Africa Town.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us about
It's
it.
been, yeah, yeah, it has been dubbed as Africa Town because it's a place where people converge and one of the only places in the city where African Americans really come together
Oh,
and have a sense of, their touch of Africa, really.
nice, nice.
So Africa Town is the word. Yeah.
Okay, okay, okay. So I haven't been to California in such a long time, and I really am overdue. But the LA that I remember is totally different. So I'm gonna have to do a tour and really get to know the new
You
LA.
do. The
Yeah.
stores that have opened up,
Mm-hmm.
the apothecaries, all of the fashion, all of
Mm-hmm.
the design
Mm-hmm.
houses, writing
Mm-hmm.
house. I mean, there's so much. There's so
Right.
much. It's like a renaissance.
Exactly. That's exactly the sense that I get. So, okay. All right. So now let's talk about you going into the business of being, first of all, being an entrepreneur, doing it yourself, right? Because there are options otherwise. But I want to know why or how you chose, first of all, your institutions to study, and then how you then transitioned into being your own boss.
So, yeah, so the institution that I chose to study, Southern California University of Health Sciences, is was rated one of the best Ayurvedic
Hmm.
programs here.
Hmm.
And so, and it literally had a class starting the following week after I spoke to. Like, yeah, I mean, it was
Oh,
just like,
yes.
okay,
Yeah.
great. Okay, thank you. Doors opening. Here we go. So I chose it there. It's also near me, but I love it.
Hmm.
The director, Dr. Anu, she is a firebrand. This woman is just lives, breathes Ayurveda and
Hmm.
community and love
Mm.
and healing and
Hmm.
accessibility.
Hmm.
We know that throughout the world there are different castes and all of these things. And so she really is about, healing for all. And so I love that. I come from that space. And we definitely have had professors who are in Dubai, who are working with, the king there, and also in Kerala, which is where there's one particular type of medicine. So Dr.
Hmm.
Ram is one of our professors. So it's a very global
Hmm.
teaching institution.
Hmm.
And then she's also on the board of NAMA. So I really chose it for that perspective.
Hmm.
And then in regards to starting my own business, I mean, I literally was building my business as I was in school. My family have all been entrepreneurs. No one's ever had a job. Everyone's always had their own business. And I've had my own business for as long as I can remember. Everything that I've ever done has been created around what it is that I'm doing, whether it be helping my sister. Okay, so I'll create something that will help me to be there. I started the music classes with the babies because I wanted my kids to have music, but I said, let me start a business around that. And then I worked into the school system with LAUSD and, offering after school programs and teachers. And then I was like, okay, this is it. This is next. What do I do? Marketing. I love marketing. I love advertising. I love I love the business entrepreneurial aspect of it. There's something about it
Mm.
that is, I love making sales. I love business. I
Hmm.
think it's empowering. If you understand the concept of actually solving someone's problem,
That part.
right?
Hmm.
Then you can do anything. It's like, and who is my avatar? Who am I working with? What are they looking for? How do I solve this? How do I solve it? It's a scientist. There's science all around.
Hmm.
Let's
Hmm.
create
Hmm.
solutions. So I'm a problem solver, I say.
Yeah.
And yeah. So yeah, that's how I got started and jumped right in. And then it was like, oh, we'd like you to come here. We want to interview you here. Come be a part of this organization. So it literally was like the doors. I'm telling you, when you're on the path, it's like the doors just open.
It's true.
And
It's
yeah, I
true.
mean, Chopra came to me and they were like, we'd like to have you become one of our teachers. It's just been
Mm.
attraction, attraction,
Mhm,
attraction.
mhm, mhm, mhm. That's
Yeah.
I love that you said that because I think that what young people struggle with so much is because of social media, they they glom onto these kind of businesses and things that are because they're copycatting as opposed to figuring out their path. And then, they're hitting walls and this, that, the other. And so I guess, in some ways it took a little bit of life-changing moments as well for you to figure out the path. But how would you, so looking at your children who are at an age where they're starting to figure out what they want to do, how would you advise a young person, right, to then be still enough or figure out how to find their path and go with whatever it is that they're really called to do?
Yeah, so I love this because unfortunately a friend of ours passed away like literally a few days ago, and I was very sad and sullen. But what it did for me was allow me to be able to pour into my son and tell him and say, listen,
Mm.
honey, you know, life is not promised. Tomorrow is not promised. Please, you have to be yourself. You have to figure out what it is that drives you.
Mm.
You have to figure out
Mhm.
what your passion is. Understand that there is room in this world for you to be exactly who you are. And everyone in this world benefits from it because it's unique and there will never, ever be anything like this ever in this world. So please be confident in, because he's also an artist. He does drawing, but he's a historian. He loves chess. Like, you are so amazing. Please trust that calling. Trust
Yeah.
that calling that is deep within you. It's there. It's reflected in almost in everything that you've probably have done because you have interests and you have likes. And those are real.
Hmm.
Turn off the social media for a little bit,
Hmm.
do some meditation, run around, jump around, follow the path. Obviously, get your business skills going because even if you are not an entrepreneur, you can be an entrepreneur, right? In the company
Mm.
where you are, you're
Hmm.
constantly always selling yourself, your ability, your skills. So understand what marketing is, understand what your brand is. understand what problems you're able to solve, understand what it means to have a good relationship with yourself so that emotional intelligence is key,
Mm-hmm.
understanding how to work with a team,
Mm-hmm.
and understanding how to, if you are going to be someone who is an entrepreneur, how do you hire the right people for the right skills? If not, then if you're a manager, how do you manage folks? Or if you're an employee, what are the best ways for you to be able to support your team and then look to see how you can help the company grow? So
Yeah.
there's always a sense of like coming from a assured place of who you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that comes from prayer, meditation, inward work, always doing inward work.
Mm-hmm. 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 So, I mean, I love that you said always be yourself because that's the start of it all, And so yep, there we go. That's if that's the one thing that I just tell young people, like be yourself. And it makes them think, well, who am I? And explore who am I and who could I be? So that experimentation is also quite important. Interesting. Okay, so then thinking about I want to get a little bit into Ayurveda a little bit more because, as I mentioned, I'm doing this cleanse. So, for people who don't know what Ayurveda is, tell us. Tell us.
All right. So yes, Ayurveda is a form of medicine that occurred or started about 5,000 years ago
Mhm.
in India, in the Indus Valley. A lot of people believe that it was brought over from the the east of Africa as well, just to kind of grow from there,
Mhm.
knowledge. But ultimately, what it is understanding nature and understanding our place in nature. So Ayurveda, the word itself is Ayur, which is life, and study, and excuse me, Veda, which is study. So the study of life is basically what Ayurveda is. And so, just as there are seasons that occur, we have the the Earth goes around the sun 365, but then there are also the seasons, spring, summer, fall. Then we have the moon cycle. Then we have the day cycle. All of those cycles are what we need to be in tune with. So the more in tune we are with nature, the healthier we are. It
Mhm.
really is just about our relationship with nature. So understanding that there are five elements that exist in this world. There is space, right? That is out there in the ether, that is in between our bones.
Mhm.
It keeps our bones, right? It keeps our bones, the structure within our body. And if there is no space, things collapse. So you think of a black hole, right? So it's ether. Then we have air. Air is what when we're breathing in and out, we're inhaling and we're exhaling. Air is what allows us to be able to hear sound, right? Because it's moving. Air is our heartbeat. It's things that move within us. It's cold, it's light. Then we have fire. Fire, if you think about it, it's like you think about acid and the burning. You think of the heat. You think of the sun. Fire is the element, and it helps to transform things. Fire is about transformation. You think about the phoenix, the right, and then that helps to metabolize. It's metabolizing. And after that, we have water. Water is, if you think about it, is in our blood. It is the rivers, the water that moves throughout us, and it helps to keep
Mm.
us hydrated. It helps us to be able to move and build a close. Sorry, I was going to say the word. I'm doing this motion, but no one can see me.
Contract.
Yeah, I'm contracting, but I'm also just talking about being able to break down the food that comes into our mouths, right? So our
Okay.
saliva helps to the
Mhm.
enzymes that are in there. That's also
Mhm.
part of fire, but it's
Mhm.
what helps to move with water, with air. It's what
Mhm.
helps to lubricate our cells. So
Mhm.
after water, we have earth, and earth is the foundation. It's solid. It's heavy, and it is the structure. It is what we can ground ourselves in it. So those are the five elements: space, air, fire, water, and earth. And all of those elements, they have combinations, and they actually, each one of us has our own level of those.
Mhm.
And so based on that, if you think about food, the food that we eat have different levels of these qualities in them.
Mhm.
Popcorn is very light, right? Let's say a lemon is very sour, so that's a little fiery. It can turn acidic,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Then you might have like a mango that's very dense and heavy.
Mhm.
So all of these foods have different qualities, and they actually help our body, or they actually have a negative effect on our body. So
Mhm.
that's what the Ayurveda is understanding all the elements within everything that's around us and how it affects our body internally and also externally. So when someone is sick, we always look at what is presenting. So if someone is having congestion in their nose, they're having a lot of like we call it sludge. So it's very heavy. It's dense, almost like earth and water, right? It's very like so we have to basically either dry it up. So there's a lot of light. We do like herbs that will actually dry up that moisture. So it's about how do you balance? It's like what are we using to balance all of anything that's imbalance in our body? We don't see anything as a sickness. It's just an imbalance.
Right.
Too much of something.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
And it also affects, it's also very important where you are seasonally. So you just talked about the weather in Ghana and how it's very dense and wet here and it's about to get really hot. So when there's too much, when there's a lot of water, you want to have warming, we want it to be a little bit warm too, because it can get cold at night. If you're too dense, if it's too heat, you want to it's warm and the heat also will dry up all of that moisture. Right? Right. But then in the summer, you definitely don't want to have too much heating spices. A lot of people, you don't want to eat too much pepper. I mean, you can because it'll sweat you down. But if you're eating too much like lemon or oranges, acidic, it can actually cause heartburn. It can cause gastritis. It can cause a lot of indigestion. So you want foods that are very cold and light, like raw fruits, raw salads, raw foods. Okay, so I mean, I can keep going.
Sure.
All of it, but it really is about likeness, understanding your unique body type, because everyone has different.
Yes.
Some people are very heavy in their body.
Yeah.
Right. And they're kind of slow. They speak slowly. They're usually very kind, and we all love them.
And that is
people who are like, that's the kapha.
Yes. Thank you. So if you can just go. So people, I want to say that if there's one thing that you kind of can know about yourself in the Ayurvedic context is just to know your doshas, just so that's something that you keep in your mind, and then you just live your life. Even if you don't do anything more in Ayurveda, just knowing your doshas can give you a little bit of that intuitive insight into, oh, well, maybe if I'm this way, that way. So tell us about the doshas.
So dosha actually means imbalance, right? So the dosha is a mixture of the elements that I talked about. So the first dosha that we'll talk about is what's called vata. Okay. And vata is a mixture of the air and ether. So it's very dry, it's very light. So typically, if you're talking about people who have higher vata in their body, they're usually very thin, long bones. Long bones, long fingernails, long toes. Also can have dryness, can feel cold a lot, but very, very, very friendly and outgoing. Maybe have erratic eating times and maybe feels hungry sometimes and not hungry sometimes. Can actually have a lot of anxiety or stress and be very irritable at times, maybe a light sleeper. So that's typically vata predominance, right? You can have a mixture of both. But the next one is what's called pitta. Pitta is a mixture of water and fire. And typically pitta, like I said, is about metabolizing and moving things. And there's a lot of, if you're talking about it from a negative standpoint, that's when inflammation comes in, right? We're talking about inflammation. We're talking about gastritis. We're talking about anything that's burning. But the body type is kind of a firm, maybe a little muscular, maybe medium height. And also the person is very driven, usually very driven, very competitive, high achieving. And also appetite can be if they don't eat regularly, they can be very hangry. So that word angry and hungry at the same time, those are usually pitta folks who have a predominance of pitta, because usually we have a mixture of both, some two doshas. And then the kapha is usually heavier in weight and can be slow in speech and takes time before they speak, in terms of their temperament, can also emotionally at times feel attachment, really taking their time. And this can be an attachment associated with kapha folks. Kaphas also are, if you're talking about imbalances, that's when you have a lot of congestion in the lungs, in your nasal cavities, maybe even growths in the body are kapha. So we call them growths. People call them different things, but any sort of growths, and then breasts in the body. So those are typically the three doshas. Vata, which is tall, thin, light, airy, dry, cold. Then there's pitta, which is medium build, muscular, very driven, hot, maybe sometimes even red in the skin, right? Can sometimes typically have a lot of inflammation or burning. And then we have kapha, which is usually a little more heavy set, slow in speech, very deliberate in kind of what they say, very kind, one of my favorite people. And and just congestion, if we're thinking about things that are imbalanced, congestion, growths, slurred, just very slow. Like it's too slow, right? Like sludgy.
Sure.
So I hope that was helpful.
Yes, yes. I think it will be very helpful. I can say that I am Vata Pitta
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of what you described. So I think we all have a little bit of all this. Whenever I've done kind of like those quizzes or whatever, Vata, Pitta, and then maybe a little bit of Kapha, but never really that much Kapha.
Yeah.
But when I went to India and even now, my Vata is my primary and then the Pitta. So I know when
So
I'm
we call
off,
that,
one of those is off. Tridosic.
yes.
Well, I'm not
Yeah, so
really.
we
I'm
call that,
bi. Yeah, go ahead.
it's fine. So we call that bottom line base level your prakriti. Prakriti, which is
Prakriti.
Pakruti.
Okay.
Yeah. And that is it actually means man or person, but like your level in Sanskrit, it is your level, but your baseline of health, right? Now, your vikruti is when you have an imbalance of something. So here's your basic, but then let's say you have too much fire, too much pitta, right? Where this is burning, inflammation in the fingers, joints, all these things, even internally, or just extremely emotionally angry, right? That's a lot of pitta too. So this is a lovely thing, though, is that when you understand this, and when we understand this more about ourselves and about each other, we can tell when someone is going through something that, oh, they might have an imbalance, that they have too much pitta today, or they have too much kapha. And it really helps to understand and give grace and compassion to people.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you're
That's what I love
understanding
about
why
it.
it's happening.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So when you think about or how you structure your engagements, you work for yourself and it's holistic. How do you work with on the family level? Because, individuals can come and they can have, their own, single people or what have you, but most people live in a family. And so an Ayurvedic lifestyle includes it's in huge part diet, right? And then also figuring out how do you manage your Western medicine versus Ayurvedic medicine and what have you. So then what are some of the approaches you use for working with individuals and then however that extends to the family setting?
Yeah, I thank you so much for asking that. So actually my tagline is a web of wellness balancing mind, body, and family. Because that's where everything starts. So each person obviously will have their own body type, which is what we just talked about, their own prakriti, their own base level of health. And there are some foods, obviously every culture has their own diet. And so in each person, I can eat a tomato and it'll affect me one way, and you can eat a tomato and it'll affect you another way based on our body type. So that's one thing that we want to know. We want to know what foods each person should kind of avoid. And so there's a list that we talk about, especially if it has a very significant reaction of the person does. But you can also have spices. Spices is something that we can use in the diet to help you to balance or increase something based on each person's unique body type. So I like to say, try to keep things simple. If you're having a grain, vegetables, try to keep the sauces light. If it's a party and you're going out, and the food is very highly spiced and it's really oily and like fried, that's great every once in a while, but we don't want to eat that type of food all the time. That causes a lot of problems. If you look at any culture, especially when we've introduced a lot of different other cultures into that culture, people are having more diabetes, people are having more heart disease, right? And a lot of it is stress because it's just the expectation of what we think we should be doing now. But a lot of it is also our diet. So when we think about, like, I know from at least my culture, like we ate a lot of rice and there were sauces, but there were also a lot of grains and vegetables and stews. And so that was very, that's fine for the family. But if we're talking about now, we understand that each person might not be able to eat peanuts or be able to eat tomatoes or be able to eat whatever it may be. We can either remove that from that family, or they can have something that's a little simpler, that is not as is triggering, because the food that we eat also affects us emotionally.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. And so I also tell them, like, we also, everyone says grace. A lot of people say grace before they eat, but really see the time that you're eating with your family, or even if you're sitting by yourself, as a time of prayer. We always say never ever eat when you're angry, when you're sad, when you're in an emotional state that is not neutral, I should say, because that affects what you're putting into your body. So it's coming from a place of gratitude. Thank you for this meal. Thank you for whoever put this in. Because you could have the least nutritious food and be so grateful for it. And the energy that you literally are, just the gratitude that you have for it can be nourishing, because we can eat a banana and it can grow a liver, right? But really, if you think about it, it's quite amazing. But you can eat something that has the best nutrition and nutrient dense, and then all of a sudden your mind is wrong, and it's just like you're slopping it into your mouth. It can become poison. So really, really coming to our meals with gratitude and almost seeing it as a prayer. Like, my goodness, this food is nourishing me. This food is nourishing my body, right? So that's in terms of some of the meals. Now, in regards to the family, also, we also teach each family member about the doshas and each particular person. And so, that person has a little pitta today, or that person has too much kapha today. And how to kind of work together too. Everyone has their own spiritual practice. But what we definitely recommend is teaching the daily routine that everyone can do, right? So the daily routine we call the dinacharya is the daily routine, is where you're doing the gandusha, sorry, the mouth
tongue
pulling.
Oh yeah, the
Mouth pulling, also the tongue scraping, the oil pulling, the scraping of the tongue, the nasya. That's part of daily routine too. Placing oil drops in your nostrils to help loosen up any of the mucus or any sort of toxins that might be in your nasal cavities, to help expel those each day. Also through your chest and your throat, through your ears, massaging your head, using oil, warm oil. It could be sesame oil, it could be any sort of oil, it could be shea butter, and literally just massaging circular motions on your joints, long strokes on your long bones, circular motion on your joints, long strokes. That helps with lymphatic drainage. And so that really helps to kind of and also during that time, it's time when you're touching yourself, you're loving yourself. With the oil, Sneha in Sanskrit is oil, but it also means love. So you're oiling yourself up and you're loving yourself. It's really important. And then stretching every day. Some people do that when they're doing their prayers or they're doing their yoga or whatever it is. But that daily routine every day with a little bit of warm water with lemon to help the digestion, that doing that every single day, really, what you're doing is you're cleaning your senses. You're cleaning your eyes, your ears, your nose, your mouth, everything above the clavicle. That's where we sense this everything. We sense the world from above our head. So we got to clean. Yeah. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. I mean, it's so simple. And I think the idea of rituals for healing is something that's kind of a lost art in Western culture. And so when you think about it, most people get up, let's go to school, aside from religious, maybe prayer, right? So maybe families might pray together. The wellness side of it is really kind of lost on families. And so how do you see a sea change? Because, because I'm sure more Indian families have these things kind of integrated into their culture. But from a full-on wellness perspective, if you were to Westernize the idea of these kind of rituals, what do you envision as a way to kind of get people's mindsets as families to transition into let's create a family ritual around our wellness?
Well, that's really good. I think the first point starts with the meals. Right? Making sure that we're at least eating together, if possible, maybe once or twice a week. And I say once or twice because I know so many families who have so many different schedules. It's really rare for people to do that. And in that time, after you've eaten, use it as a time to, have a schedule. Or what are we working on? What are we doing? What are our goals? Right? What is our family mission?
That stuff.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes, it's so key. A lot
Right.
of people just exist and get up and they just do stuff mindlessly. But
Yeah.
what is our family mission? What are we doing here?
Mm-hmm.
Because this
Mm-hmm.
is a business on some level, right?
It
Like we
is.
are specifically doing these. We're going to school because we want to do this, and we're doing this because we
Mm-hmm.
want. Like there's always a cause and effect.
Mm-hmm.
But what
Mm-hmm.
is the goal? Like what is it that we're trying to achieve here? Are we health? How is everyone doing? What is
Right.
something that worked well for you today or didn't work well? What can I do that you like? Or what, asking questions, what can I do
Mm-hmm.
that you like? What am I doing that you don't like?
Right.
What would you like me to do that I'm not doing?
Yeah. So really
Asking
having the
appropriate questions.
conversations, yeah, to get to
Yeah.
know each other,
Ask,
like really focus on the knowing
yes.
of each other. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You just said it right there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think once you do that, obviously everyone's time in the bathroom and all those things, if that's personal, they're going to do that.
Sure.
But I believe incorporating, especially as parents or family or spouses or whatever, partners, having that conversation and understanding, like, yeah, this is part of our health and our wellness so that
Mm-hmm.
I can communicate with you in a healthy and conscious way.
Yeah.
That I'm coming from an empowered space, that I am actually can see and I can breathe, and I'm not acting out because I'm so stressed out because I can't, you know what I mean? I can't
Yeah.
function well because
Yeah.
my body's not working,
Right.
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so all
Yeah.
connected. Because
Exactly.
the bottom
Exactly.
line is like, I want to love you. I
Mm-hmm.
want to be in this relationship with you. I want you guys to know that this is love. Our family is here because we are supporting each other and we want to do everything that we can to be able to uplift each other so that we can be the best people for this world.
There we go.
That is the
There we
goal.
go. That is the goal. That's like so this is a great time for me to ask about your mindset hack, but that's like a family hack, right? So let's talk about how you hack your mind. So this is where I ask you to share what is your favorite or an innovative mindset hack? This is one that you practice, one that you can imagine, or one that you just know of.
Yeah. So what I always say, like I said, it was when I was going through the rehab, that space, and I started to think outside of myself. I always ask, how can I serve?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how can I serve? Like that for me really helps me because what it does is it asks me, like, what is it that I'm capable of doing? Right. And then it allows me to be able to say, okay, well, today I can do this, or today I can help in this way. That's what works for me, because otherwise my mind will go to like, what's the lack? What's there not? So I think,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right. So this sense of how can I help and how can I serve helps me to get out of my own mind and my own way. And then it helps me it builds my confidence. It builds my ability to be able to be like a contributing member of society.
Mm-hmm.
That is that's my mind. That's the one that works all the time.
Sure.
I mean, I have other things, like I might listen to some meditation, some
Mm-hmm.
NLP, neuro linguistic programming,
Mm-hmm.
just some guided, all of those things. But when it really comes down to, if I'm feeling really sad or, depressed or anything like that, because I go up and down,
Mm-hmm.
I'll ask, like, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing? What am I supposed to be doing? Like, how can I help? How
Mm-hmm.
can I help?
Mm-hmm. 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 Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all
Yeah.
vessels for some. Okay, that's a good one. Yeah, how can I help? That's a great mindset hack. It's like, yeah, when you're feeling so down on you or you can't find it, how can you be helpful to this existence that we're all treading in? So I love that one.
Yeah.
So before we kind of start to ease ourselves into the Kadi who is not the Ayurvedic practitioner or the singer, I want to find out a little bit more about what do you see in the innovation space in Ayurveda, because it is an ancient and
Yeah.
older medicine. And so where do you see innovation kind of in the next 5, 10 years around Ayurveda?
So I am also a techie. I love tech, and I'm always thinking about, like, what app can I create to be able to
Mm-hmm.
have someone in the middle of, like, I don't know, Luanda, who's like dealing with whatever it may be, and then they can just post in whatever their symptoms are, and then come up with some herbs that might be good for it, or what,
Mm-hmm.
or they're placing their finger on the back of their phone, so they're checking their heartbeat. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if you saw that movie Big Take Six or something like that. My kids watched it. It was about this robot that could help people. It could scan you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the idea of tech, obviously we don't want people who are, in the stage where there are acute, illnesses,
Mm-hmm.
help, curing themselves on that level. But in terms of like daily knowledge, about the herbs and the elements that are around you. How can I use what is God given around me to help me? Like all the plants that are usually around an area, people can use those to deal with the ailments that they typically have.
Yeah.
If you look at, so I want there to be some sort of application where people have the ability to be able to learn on their own, apply that, and reinforce what they probably already doing with from their grandmother, and then to have like a community around it.
I love that.
I also believe that in terms of innovation, there's a lot of integrative medicine that's occurring, right? If you think about it, everyone now is talking about gut biome and what the gut health and how we have two brains, one in our mind, or maybe even three: our minds, our hearts, and our guts. And so everything is sort of going back to the basics. And so how can medicine be more preventative as opposed to dealing with symptoms and the side effects from the symptom and the medication that they're dealing with?
Sure.
Because ultimately, again, it comes down to sitting at the table with your family, having a meal and enjoying each other, right?
How do you get to that point? Yeah.
Yes. How can we do that from anywhere in the world? That is my thing. Like, how can anyone in the world have this access, this knowledge? So I think it's really important.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, so that's, innovatively, obviously, like the tech around being able to share the knowledge, which already exists. You can use ChatGPT, and there's so many apps and AI that can assist with all of that right now. But I think that's just how it's incorporated in medical practice globally.
Right. And then how that's also shared, because we are so, again, Western medicine is the higher standard. So how do you allow or get people's mindsets to allow for, let me think a little bit less pharma and a little bit more nature?
Well, I love allopathic medicine, Western medicine for the acute issues that people have. So if, like for me, I had to go into the hospital because I broke my pelvis and my back. Right. So I had to go to therapy. So I'm so grateful for the advances that are there in terms of scanning and radiology, all those things that exist. So that is in tandem, which is why I say integrative medicine is so important. So I think really, you would think, okay, how is that innovative? It's innovative because in terms of using, whether it's Chinese medicine, Indian medicine, African medicine, unami, all the different types that are there, because it really helps the client or the patient or the person, first of all, feel like they have a part of their healing.
That part.
And they're empowered in that. And that helps them to heal faster. As opposed to feeling and giving their power outside to someone else.
Exactly.
Who's going to save them. There's a business model around that. Let's be honest. The more sick people you have, the more money you can make. Let's be honest about that. And that's the reality for some people. And so I think that's the innovation is really kind of coming in from like a humanistic standpoint of like, let's really help folks, because then there's room for so much more. Like,
right. Exactly.
Exactly.
I love that. So I love those innovations, and we're going to get there. So tell us, who is Kadi when she's just kind of doing her own thing? And so I typically ask, are you a reader, a watcher, or a listener? And what are some of your favorite reads, watches, or listens? Or how else do you spend your leisure time?
Okay, so whenever I have a moment to myself, the first thing I do is look for documentaries. I love documentaries. I love understanding a human's nature. I just love profiles of people. I also love watching psychological thrillers.
Okay.
Those are one of my, if I'm watching a film, I will definitely watch a psychological thriller. That really just is intriguing to me because I love being able to think about what is happening as opposed to just, taking it in. And in terms of reading, lately I've just been reading a lot of business books. There's one book called Who Not How that I've been reading. And it discusses sometimes we get caught into how we're doing something as opposed to who we know, who can assist us along the way. And understanding and being really strategic about relationship building. So that's something that I really want to stress. Relationships, relationships, relationships. On
Definitely.
every level. On
Yeah.
every level.
Okay. All right. So, in terms of psychological thrillers, any recent ones that you can recommend?
Yeah, well, I watched this one about, I think it was, what was his name? Goodness, Leslie Odom Jr. and Cynthia
Ah,
Erivo.
okay. Okay.
I can't remember the name. I gotta find it now. Oh my
Oh,
gosh!
I
But
know
it
that
was.
one.
Do you
Was
know what
it
I'm talking about?
like it was
When they
on
yes,
the future thing?
yes, where they could change
Yeah.
their future and their past,
Yes.
and
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
and they
Okay.
were in love, and they were in love with each
Mhm.
other, and that was the thread that kept them going throughout everything.
Was it Netflix or was it Amazon? I think it's Netflix. But yeah, I that'll be in the show notes, folks, because it's a good movie.
Yeah,
So yeah. Okay.
yeah, yeah. That was fantastic, actually, and just
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it was fantastic. Just and I mean, you talked about mind, right? And
Hmm.
so I really appreciated them. I love seeing them in that. I love Cynthia
Yes.
Erivo. I think she's phenomenal.
Yeah, she's great.
She's just like excellent in almost everything I see her do. She just loves it so much. You can see the discipline, and that's what I like.
Yeah.
So when I right, like I love watching and seeing people be who they truly are because they love it so much
Hmm.
that's what they're dedicated to doing, and they
Yeah.
become experts in it because they just love it.
Yeah. That's I mean, if there's any takeaway that I get from talking to all the different global citizens that I've spoken to, that's it. It's when you find what you love, it is the easiest thing in the world to continue and to be.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
really is it.
Hmm.
That really
Hmm.
is it.
Hmm.
I might have to
Yes.
make you might have to make a t-shirt out of that.
Oh, right. I know, something like that. Yeah, but merchandise is coming soon, folks. You'll be able to buy some Glocal Citizens merch. Glocal
I
Citizens
love
merch is
it.
coming. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
Look at
Kadi,
that. Great, great, great. Yes, honey, listen.
yes,
We're in the marketplace. This world is a marketplace.
it is. Exactly, exactly. So this has been such a wonderful time, and thank you for your patience with these connections and all of those things. And so before we sign off, are there any last thoughts that you'd like to share with the audience?
Yes. As we grow into ourselves from children to the teen years to our youth, I mean, to, young adults,
Hmm.
into our crone ages, into elderly, we're always evolving and shedding. We're also adding new information. And so, in that process, the shedding that I want to talk about is how important it is for us to be able to let go of the old to make space for the new.
Hmm.
So, and I'm going to incorporate that into with Ayurveda because every season, which is what you were talking about earlier, we need to release the energies and the from the past season so that we are fresh again for what's new, what's coming ahead. So, if I recommend anything, is to do any sort of cleansing,
Mm.
whether it be spiritual, whether it be physical, anything that you know that you need to release from your body so that you are rejuvenated, I highly recommend. So you could do cleanses. Like I said, there's a spring cleanse that occurs or a fall
Hmm.
spirit cleanse.
Hmm.
There are silent retreats that you can do that exist at different places where you don't speak for a spot of time. You can give up social media.
Hmm.
There's certain things that you can do to release to get back to yourself because that's who we all love. We love you at your full self. And we thank you for literally being brave enough to show up each day and just try, just keep working, just keep working, just keep putting your one foot in front of the other. And be kind
Yes.
to yourself, most importantly. Give yourself
Yes.
grace.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you for this Her Story. It's a great way to wrap up our March Her Stories. I thank you so, so, so much. Your contact information will be on our show notes, but if you can tell us where we can find you, we can share that with the audience right now.
Yeah, sure. You can reach me at a web of wellness, AWEBOF wellness, a web of wellness.com. I have courses there. You can reach out to me. I do speaking engagements. I do presentations, health facilities for behavioral health therapists, women groups, men groups. You can reach me also on social media at LinkedIn, at a web of wellness, as well as Instagram and Facebook.
Okay. And YouTube. Don't forget you have a YouTube channel.
Oh yeah, YouTube. Thank you, Mama.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, YouTube.
Yeah. So all of that will be on the show notes. So thank you again and all the best to you.
You too. I just want to congratulate you and acknowledge you for just taking this time to create space for all of us to be able to share what's unique about us and what we're contributing to the world. I thank you so much for this opportunity.
Oh,
I can't wait to see you and to create more things with you. So I
yes.
appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. We're looking forward. All right, local citizens, this has been another episode of the podcast. You can catch us Tuesdays with new episodes at glocalcitizenspod.com or wherever you get your podcast. Please like, share, leave us a review, tell a friend, and subscribe. So until next time, thank you for joining us for Her Stories March. There's always great content, folks. So be on the lookout for even better and more coming up here. So I'm so grateful that you all are with us on this Global Citizens journey. So until next time, bye for now.